Hello! Welcome to our Haitham pre-release analysis. We're going to talk about everything I know about Haitham from pre-release and what we found to help you be ready for him. So let's start with the core of his kit. Haitham's elemental skill has this mechanic called the Chisel Light Mirrors. He can have 1, 2, 3 of these at a time. They will also perform coordinated projection attacks with his autos every 1.6 seconds. These apply Dendro with a unique ICD of every other hit. So the level 1 E-skill stack is just the slash. That will apply Dendro every other hit. The level 2 hits twice. It is a fidget spinner. It applies Dendro once every hit, or once every proc. And then level 3 is Gilgamesh's Rain. That it will spread or apply Dendro twice every other. So it'll follow a pattern of 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Zashu? Fate, yes. Now, while he has Chisel Light Mirrors, his sword becomes infused with Dendro and deals Dendro damage. He can gain these Chisel Light Mirrors in a few ways. The first is his burst, which will be one of the most important ways to get them. If you burst while he's at 0 Chisel Light stacks, he gains 3 immediately. Or he gains 3 after 2 seconds, per se. Not immediately, technically. He gains 1 stack every 12 seconds by doing a charged attack. And he gains 1 stack from his E-skill, but when he has 0 stacks, his E-skill will generate 2. What does that mean? TLDR, we'll talk about it later, but you want to try to maintain 3 mirror uptime as long as possible, so you don't want to waste your stacks. So you wouldn't do E and 1C. E and 1C would be a bad idea, unless you're trying to front load level 3 stacks. Or like a burst nuke. But generally, you don't want to build for the burst nuke, because his ER will generally be 130 to 140, even in the optimal standard rotations with another Dendro character, if you're trying to burst every rotation. If you're not trying to burst every rotation, you don't really need to worry about ER. So you have some options when you use his burst. You can Q, wait 2 seconds to get your infusion. That is something you can do, but it's very easy to screw up. You can also Q N4. Now, when you do Q N4, the first 3 normal attacks, so N1, N2, and N3, will be fizz damage, and the N4 is a marker for the exact moment where you can start applying Dendro with your auto attacks, and that way your first mirror proc will always be a level 3, meaning it will spread twice immediately. And then, very niche, but you can press Q and then swap off Haitham and swap back. As long as you do it within 2 seconds, you can gain the stacks when he gets back on field. Now, the problem with this is if you miss the timing for this, or if your ping is too high causing you to miss it, your burst has just done nothing, and you've wasted 70 energy. And you also got no infusion. But hey, it is technically an option. We can also briefly touch on weapons. This over here is his 5-star weapon. This is the Light Foliar Incision. This is the Primordial Jade Cutter. This is the Mist Splitter, Haran Kapakafutsu. This is the Umbrella from the recent event. Iron Sting, Black Sword, Zyphos, and Fav. Real quick overview of these weapons. This is the best in slot. This one's 7 to 10% behind. This one is fairly similar, but a little bit behind the Jade Cutter. This one's behind both of them. The Umbrella is a fantastic free-to-play weapon option. In single target, this weapon is just a better R5 Iron Sting, and it doesn't cost billets, which is the incredible part. It just doesn't cost billets. If you want to spend billets, Iron Sting is also incredibly good and just as good as the Umbrella. There is Black Sword as your Battle Pass option, R1 to R5. At low refines, it can get outperformed by Black Sword and by Iron Sting and Umbrella. If we're talking about Hyper Bloom comps, you're going to need a lot more energy on Haitham, which is where we get to talk about Xiphos and Favonius Sword. If we're not playing Dendro, or if we're not playing Haitham with any other Dendro character. But hey, it's an option. Real quick, touching on his sets. There is Wood. All of his teams are going to want to feature at least one character on Wood. It does not have to be Haitham himself, but you will want Wood. For that sweet, sweet Dendro shred. Haytham's ideal set is Gilded Dreams. 4-piece, actually. But the difference between the 4-piece Gilded Dreams and a 2-piece, 2-piece option is very minimal. You can easily stack cap it. Regarding 2-piece, 2-piece options, you will generally want to target 2-piece EM, 2-piece EM before 2-piece EM, 2-piece Dendro damage percent. But it can completely depend, and I'd highly recommend checking out a system like Genshin Optimizer. How minimal? Less than 5%? Let's take a look. Yes. 4%. Is this like Child 2-piece, 2-piece versus Hot Case? It's a little different because 4-piece Hot is genuinely not as good as 2-piece, 2-piece on Tartaglia. Yeah. Haitham has some Constellations. His C1 drops the cooldown of his E skill every time you do a Chiselite Mirror proc. What does this mean? Basically nothing, but you can E twice per uptime and not have your E for the next uptime. So you can E twice once. His C2, on the other hand, is generally his best early Constellation. This gives you 175 to 200 EM. It is 50 EM up to 4 stacks, depending on his stack. And every time he generates a Chiselite Mirror, each stack is independent. So if you burst, you'll start and you go to 3 stacks, you'll have 175. The next stack you gain will put you to 200, and they decay one by one. So you will generally always be around 175 EM from this skill. C3 is his E skill, which is his most important talent. His E skill is actually 65% of his damage. Or I guess I should say 50 to 60% of his damage. It is his most important talent by far. C4, if we're talking about average gain, it is 30, or for non-C6, it is 30 damage percent. C5 is his burst. It is very insignificant outside of his burst. For his total rotational damage, it's like a 1% increase for getting C5. C6 is a crit damage increase by 70% and a crit rate increase by 10% whenever you overcap his stacks. So you're incentivized to cap out C2 and get the 200 EM from C2. You can also use this to double dip on C4, because C4 also has an EM component to it that you cannot get reliable, or that you can only get by bursting with stacks, which you generally want to avoid unless you are C6, because the C6 gives him 3 stacks every single time, no matter how many stacks you had before bursting. So you can do something like 2-stack burst, and then you can burst, gain 1 stack, get the 3 stacks from your burst, and then you have C2 at full cylinders, you've double dipped on C4, and you have the crit from C6. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure every single one of his Constellations is worse than Nihida's C2. So if you are highly considering whaling for Haytham's Constellations, make sure you have Nihida's C2. His teams will generally fall into 2 archetypes. There are Spread and Hyperbloom teams, or Bloom teams in general. Real quick, we will touch on Nilou Bloom. He works. You can play Nilou Bloom. So regarding teams like Hyperbloom, you're going to talk about Yelan, Xingqiu, you know, the standard characters. Kokomi is an option if you want the healer. You will always want a Hyperbloom trigger, since Haitham is not an Electro character. Your Hyperbloom triggers are Kuki Shinobu or Raiden. I am gonna take a second to point out one amazing thing about Kuki Shinobu. She's a healer. And Haitham has no interruption resistance or knockback resistance in any way, shape, or form, or damage reduction. You're gonna want to heal her. You're gonna keep it simple. Another Zhao Wanderer incident? Yeah, exactly. Literally the right headspace. And then regarding spread, again, you will want... you want some kind of defensive option, and then you'll want a character like Beto, EI, or Fischl. One thing I will point out about Fischl is while Haitham is on field, you get dramatically reduced A4 procs compared to any other, or compared to an Electro character. Because the Dendro spread technically is a Dendro on Dendro reaction, not a Dendro on Electro interaction. Quicken is a Dendro on Electro interaction. And Aggravate is an Electro on Dendro interaction. So spread does not proc Fischl A4. So Fischl can be a little scuffed compared to what she does in other teams. Now, in these teams, you will be generally playing by 2 rotations. There's continuous field time, which is when you burst, and then you gain 1 stack every 2 combos, either from his E or his charged attack. What does this mean? It means you stay on field with him for 12 to 14 seconds. This is most relevant for Hyper Bloom teams, or just to simplify his gameplay. The short plus long rotation is where you will E, do normal attack combos. It is very important that you do not use the charged attack during this first uptime. You have to save the charged attack for later if you want good 3-stack uptime in your second combo uptime. So what the short long rotation does is it gives you 1 or 2 additional particles from his E skill. I didn't talk about it, but his energy generation is tied to his Chiselite Mirror procs. And it also allows you to swap off and re-up things like Yai turrets, Oz, do a Beto counter, regroup enemies with your Kazuha. It's just generally a good idea to do this in spread teams. Or in multi-wave content. You can also remark enemies with your Nahida E. So the name of the game is to stay in 3 mirrors as long as possible after you burst. So if you don't have Nahida, you will generally need about 10 to 15% more ER on your Haitham, unless you aren't building ER by not bursting consistently, which you technically can get away with. But if you do want to go for Dendro Resonance, your options are Yao Yao, DMC, or Cole. If we're talking about DMC and Cole, you'll want to do 2 E's on them to sufficiently generate energy for Haitham. And if you want to talk about Yao Yao generates 5 particles on her E skill, and she will be on his banner, which is very nice. I believe that is all I actually have to say about Haitham. Anyone have any questions? Also redoing Lantern, right? Yeah. Anyone have any questions for me? Anyone? C1 change rotations? Generally, no. You can use C1 once. What is the meaning of life? How big is this cock? Well, I do a post-release on Haitham. If things are dramatically, Freedom Sword is another decent weapon. Technically. Is it considered good Zhao or bad Zhao? Regarding meta strength of this character, I literally have no idea. We've done, like, the pre-release calcs for him, like we do for every character. We looked at weapons, we looked at artifacts, we looked at constellations. I don't know. Like, he's either going to be quite good or he's going to be aggressively mediocre. And I'm not sure which one it is yet. To be completely honest, I do not know. Recommended ER, if we're playing with Nahida, I would recommend 130, 140. Is he better than Batcac? I literally just tried to answer this question. Haitham Virgin, you can play Virgin. How crucial is Nahida for his teams? Haitham is a character that uses EM scaling quite heavily. Because of this, his best buffer and his best sub DPS are both Nahida. He gets up to 250 EM and another 100 from Dendro Resonance. And Nahida herself does a lot of damage. Can you do burn? No. If you apply Dendro to burning, it just puts out the burning and the spread, and the quicken. It griefs you. How good is Haitham National? Bad. You'll just get burning. He does better than all of his cons, basically. Yeah. How did I build Nahida for his team? EM, EM, EM? Or EM Dendro EM? Or EM Dendro Crit? I'd really just build Nahida as Nahida. You can put Nahida on 4-piece wood for him. But if you're playing something like Spread, you could also put wood on a character like Shinobu, and it's a non-issue. How much does Nahida C2 improve him? Nahida C2 is an 18% damage increase for spread-related or anything for talent damage, and it's a 20% damage increase for Bloom-related reactions, or Dendro-related reactions. So it is generally a 20% team DPS increase. 12-second quick-stop rotations with C1 versus 18-second sustained rotation C0. What does a 12-second quick-swap rotation with C1 mean? How are we spending that little field time? And still doing damage and proccing his mirrors? Is Nahida C2 better than Bennett buff for Raiden Nuke? That's not about Haitham. How will Yaya decrease the Yarek? Yaya generates less energy than Nahida, but she still generates 5 particles. Haitham himself generates 5 to 6 or 7. But keep in mind, you can opt to not burst every rotation, technically. You still may want to for optimal damage, though. Because you're trying to maximize level 3 procs, and it's unfeasible to maintain level 3 without his burst. How much increases C2 from C0? It should be roughly 15%. If not... So this over here is... I had it 8.4%. This is with the 2 stack on his C2. It should actually be average of 3 stacks, so it's slightly better than this. I think that's all we have to say, right? Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. If anyone's interested in learning about any of these rotations, there is a link attached in the comments for a pre-release sheet, which has the mapping for the rotations I sheeted. The stuff in pink is actually recorded. The stuff down here is all speculative.